Okay, those logistics are handled. Well, it's so lovely to see all of you tonight. It's nice to see some familiar faces, some new neighbors in our neighborhood even, and new faces as well. And so I will share a little bit about the intent behind the 3P Community Night and introduce Rachel, and then we'll just kick off the evening and go from there. The idea is that Rachel and I will both share for a period of time, and then we would love to open it up for whatever questions, reflections, insights, whatever conversation you'd like to have. We'll open it up to all of you so that it can be an interactive evening. And it's lovely to see you. Hey, Tammy. So, in terms of the 3P Community Night, this originally started out as in-person evenings that we were having in Los Angeles to just build the local LA community. That's why they're at a 7 p.m. on a Thursday night. And then when we were no longer able to meet as a group, we decided, well, let's just have it online. And I've actually really enjoyed having it. I mean, I love seeing people in person too, but I'm so grateful that we have been able to continue in this format. And it's really fun to be able to open it up to a larger group and have more people coming and sharing this. And so for those of you who may be completely new to what the 3Ps are, I'll share just a little bit about that. The 3P stands for three principles, and it's a name used to describe the teachings of Sydney Banks. And he was an ordinary man who had a very powerful realization experience. Some might say it was an enlightenment experience. And he shared from that understanding. And it has been called various things over the years, but one of the latest names for it is the three principles. And people will always say, well, what are the three principles? And I'll give you the names, but they're not really going to do much more than give you the names. So they are the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And he used those terms as a way to point towards how we as humans create experience. And so we use those principles. They're universal to all of us, and they're formless principles. It's like gravity. You can't see them, you can't measure them, but they're the way that he described that we create experience. And in the conversation, it, for me, has been really powerful in terms of helping me to get more comfortable with my human experience, helping me to not be running away from it anymore, even if it gets uncomfortable. And in that experience of being able to be more present, it has allowed me to have a deeper connection beyond my human experience too, to what I would call my spiritual nature. But you could use whatever name you would like to use for that. So it's a very broad conversation. It's not based on any specific technique. It's really pointing each and every one of you to listen to your own wisdom and to see how these principles unfold in your life. And tonight we're very lucky to have Rachel Langer with us. She is a coach. She also lives in the Los Angeles area. And she is also, Angus and I are apprentices from the Pransky and Associates, George and Linda, and she's also studied with them as well. And so she works as a coach, working with individuals, couples, and teams and executives. And I'll read what she wrote. It's easier for me to read it. She guides her clients to practical solutions and new understandings so they can move more easily and joyfully through life. And tonight we're going to be talking about the theme, which is no exceptions, meaning that there's no exceptions in terms of how humans create experience. So Rachel, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us tonight. It's wonderful to have you here.
I'm so glad you asked me. Thank you so much.
Ah.
I feel honored. So I appreciate it. I've been to several of these, but obviously haven't had the chance to talk with you at the front of the room, so to speak. So that's fun for me.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where would you like to start?
Well, I was thinking that I might just tell the story of how I came up with this idea of no exceptions and why it even occurred to me that that might be something we could talk about tonight that would be helpful for people.
Sounds great.
And it all started. Way back when, actually at the very first weekend of the Soul Centered series this year. So what was that, September? It seems like, many lifetimes ago for all of us. I'm sure so many things have changed since then. But what happened was Aaron Turner was the guest speaker that weekend. And I really enjoyed what he talked about and, basically remember none of it. But I remember, as tends to happen to me in these 3P weekends, but I remember this idea of, really, as we do in all of the 3P events, talk about this concept that, we are creating our experience from the inside out. And so I'm always looking to poke holes in the theory. Like I want to, like that, well, there's things that doesn't work for. And so for me, one of the things I've just been grappling with for the past few years in my life is food and eating a healthy diet. That is a challenge for me because I don't like vegetables. And so I feel like a healthy diet includes vegetables and I don't like vegetables. And so I am stuck. So I asked Aaron in between sessions, it wasn't even part of the main conversation, but I went up to him and I said, I'm really having a problem because I don't understand how this applies because I don't like vegetables and I want to eat a healthy diet and I can't, and I just don't like them. And isn't taste a biological function? Like I don't have control over what tastes good to me and what doesn't taste good to me. And he just looked at me and he was like off to the bathroom or something. And he said, yeah, there's no exceptions. And I was like, okay. And that was it. I mean, literally that was the entire conversation. And I was like, well, that didn't really help me, to be quite frank. And, but I just kept thinking about it. And I just kept thinking, like, do I agree with that there's no exceptions? Like, even if I can't see it for the vegetables thing, like, is that right that there's no exceptions? And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I had to agree. Like I couldn't think of how it could work any way if there was an exception. Because once there's one exception, then where do you draw the line? And so then everything would be an exception to somebody. And so then it would fall apart. And I know that this idea of creating experience from the inside out was true for me in so many ways. Like there was no doubt that that's the way it works. So I kind of had to go along with the no exceptions. So if there's no exceptions, then it had to be that eating vegetables was also not an exception. So over time, the course of a few months, I thought, well, here's how I can use no exceptions to my benefit. That would be helpful. And what occurred to me was, well, even though I can't see it, even though I don't have a good solution yet to the vegetable problem, if there are no exceptions, then someday I'll figure it out. Someday I'll come up with something and it'll make this work. And can I just go along for the ride? That right now I don't see it. To me, this really feels like an exception because I don't like vegetables. I can't make myself eat them. Makes me feel sick if I eat it. Like I just don't like it. But I was able to allow for the possibility that one day I might see it differently. And that was a game changer. Like that alone was a game changer for me. That this idea that if there's no exceptions, then even though something that feels like an exception in the moment, like vegetables, or, right now, to be quite frank, to me, there's a perfect example, right? COVID, right, is the perfect like example of what could potentially be a big exception for a lot of people, myself included, all the things that surround, right, what we're all going through right now. But if there's no exceptions, there's a peace and a freedom that happens for me inside when I realize, well, even though it feels scary, upsetting, negative, stuck, whatever it is, it's like, I'm just not seeing it yet. And the yet to me is the peace of mind that someday I will, whenever that day comes. And I can wait. I know how to be patient. I may not like it, but I know how. And to be honest, I think about it all the time. I think about it all the time, this idea of no exceptions. So, if my husband is irritating me about something that I really think I'm right about, which, happens, I can see like, oh, I want to have a happy marriage, right? I want to have a peaceful home. And even though I think he's really wrong or being a jerk or whatever the case may be, it's like something about it I'm not seeing. And I may still feel crappy in this moment, but I know in the long run, like I'll see it differently. I have that knowing of no exceptions that someday I'll see it differently. Whenever that is, it's okay with me. So that's really how it came up, and kind of where I am still in the inquiry of it is that there are still many things, to be quite frank, that I don't see and that make me upset and that feel like they're real and they really are out there, and that actually is really upsetting or really terrible, or I really don't like that. And it helps that be easier for me. And that's what I'm after, is to have like a more peaceful life that I can enjoy more of. And that's what I help people do when I work with them. It's like, well, how can we just enjoy things more? I mean, I can't think of anything better. So that's what I like to spend my time doing. And then just to bring it full circle, this idea, of course, in the principles that at some point we see something that we didn't see before, and then everything changes. So, and then once you see it, you realize how, of course, like it seems so, not even silly, but just like it seems so obvious once you see it that it's like, it's almost like worth a little giggle to think, oh, just yesterday I didn't see that. So what happened was I was listening to Linda Pransky on some totally other topic. I mean, some other webinar I was just listening in, and somebody was complaining about some work that they were doing that they didn't like. And Linda, again, almost as like an offhand remark, said like, oh, so you have a thing about things you don't like. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a thing about food I don't like. And I wasn't even thinking about it in the moment, but when she said that to this other person about, of course, a totally separate topic, I got it, and it occurred to me. I think, I don't know what Aaron thought when I said, what about food? And he said, no exceptions, if he really, had thought about it. But what I got in the moment for me that has totally worked, and basically I'm a vegan now, so that's what that's about, is it's not that I started liking vegetables. It's that I realized I didn't have to care that I didn't like vegetables. I didn't have to make it important that I didn't like them. It instantly got more important that they were good for me and that I felt better eating a different way. And so the fact that I didn't like them, I still don't like them, to be quite frank, but it's all I eat now, and it's fine with me. And I just didn't, I was so focused on but I don't like them, I don't like them, I don't like them. And that's what I thought was going to change, that one day I would like them. And it turns out that wasn't it for me. What it was, oh, I cannot like them, but it also doesn't have to matter. And that was the key that unhooked it for me. So that's how I got to that no exception one. And that's been really fun. That's just been really fun for me. I think about it all the time. I mean, I think still all the time I think about it. Like I laugh now. I'm like eating, sauteed vegetables and kale shakes and things. And I mean, it's like my husband gives me funny looks. He can't believe it. I mean, I was the biggest carnivore on the planet. And it's a total game changer. So that's my
quite
story.
the full circle. That's quite the full circle. So in terms of that phrase, no exceptions, for people to kind of understand, like, what are there no exceptions to? Like, what are you saying there are no exceptions to?
Yeah. So for me, what I mean by that is that there's no exceptions to the understanding that our life is created inside of us, that things outside of us aren't actually making our life a certain way. Even though it really seems like that a lot of the time, to me too, I mean, to all of us, I think, but definitely me too, that it seems like things out there, other people, situations, places, events, weather, anything, children, dogs, do things to me, make me feel ways, make me upset, that's inconvenient, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And that's actually never the case. And another, in this moment, example that comes to mind, I remember George telling a story, George Pransky, of a couple that he worked with whose son had been murdered. And that it had been several years since this had occurred. And the one of the them was doing a lot better and kind of starting to recover and get back into life. And the other one just was non-functional. And so the wife called and said, we need help with this. And to think that a child being murdered to George was not an exception, that there was a way to help those parents feel better, somehow manage that grief and devastation, which of course was real. You lose a child. That's hard to think of something more devastating than a child being murdered. And yet George was like, oh no, I can work with that. He was not intimidated by that. Now, I wasn't in the sessions. I don't know what he said, but the fact that that's not an exception. Well, I mean, if that's not an exception, then there can't be, like, what could possibly be an exception?
Right. Vegetables aren't going to cut it.
Right?
Yeah. I said vegetables aren't going to be an exception if that's not an exception.
That's right. I mean, vegetables have nothing on murder, so, but I remember that. I remember George saying that he was like, absolutely, absolutely, I can help with that. And I was like, okay, great.
And there's two things that are really powerful, but the first one is how you were able to recognize that even when you hadn't seen that the suffering around vegetables was coming from all of the thinking you had about not liking the taste of them, like even before you saw that, you found greater level of peace at the level of understanding that you were at, just by being okay with the fact that you weren't seeing it yet, but you knew that there were no exceptions. Like that to me is really profound.
I mean, 100%. 100%. It was such a game changer to have that idea that well, I can't see it now, but I will one day, maybe, right? Some things I may never see. But just the thought that there are no exceptions. So even though I can't see it, the rule still applies. That somehow this is inside me, and therefore it's on me. I don't have to rely on anybody else, anything else happening or not happening to help me feel better or feel more peaceful or enjoy more or less grief or whatever it is. That is like the ultimate freedom to me. And it's peaceful. Like it has a peaceful feeling about it to me. So when I get really worked up about something that feels really upsetting, it's not that I'm not upset, right? It's not that the vegetables don't still taste bad. It's that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really upset. And that's okay. I'll sort it out sometime. Mm-hmm. Sometimes sooner, sometimes later, don't know how, don't know what it's going to look like, but I know I'll get to that place somehow, some way. And that there's a hopefulness in that, right? Or George, right? We had a whole weekend on hope. And it's like, I mean, what could be more peaceful than hope for me?
Yeah. And that ability, what you're saying really highlights how we can actually be comfortable within our human experience, no matter what the human experience is. Like, as you're saying, with grief or with not liking vegetables or with anger, whatever the experience is, if we can be okay with experience, we don't have to add on those extra layers of suffering that you were doing previously with the vegetables, where I don't like vegetables, but then there's all this thinking going on top of the fact that you didn't like vegetables, the meaning being created. Yeah. And when we see, as you're pointing to, that, experience is always created through thought. It has to be created that way. There's nothing that we can experience without, thought, having the thought, having consciousness, bring it to life, having the energy behind all of that. That's what is really being pointed to with the three principles that I talked about at the very beginning. And, I think for myself, I've had that similar kind of, what a relief, to be able to realize that I didn't have to change my experience. I thought initially, when I came across this understanding and what I had been trying to do previously to this understanding, is that I thought that whatever was going to help me was going to be something that was going to improve my experience. So I was constantly looking at, how do I get a better experience? How do I have more of these feelings that I like? And how do I have less of these feelings that I don't like? And so that's what I thought I was going to get when I came across this understanding. I was like, a better way to have more of the feelings I like. Fantastic. I'm up for that. Not true. But what you're saying in terms of the ultimate of freedom, like that, I feel is more important, the freedom to be okay with whatever my experience is. I'm actually more grateful for that now than I would have been getting more of the good feelings. It still would have never been enough, basically.
Yeah.
And so what I saw was that when it wasn't about trying to find a better feeling, when it wasn't about trying to improve myself so I could have a better feeling, it was simply about seeing how feelings are created in that way and seeing how feelings are always going to come and go, and that we are more than just our feelings and our thoughts, that there is a deeper space of freedom, of peace, however you would like to label that, that the feelings happen within. You know, some people might say that's consciousness, but it's like I didn't have an experiential reference point for that because I was so consumed by my feelings and so consumed with trying to improve them that they were like the full screen of my awareness. I had no idea that they were happening, that there was something beyond that experience.
Yeah.
And it was, quite a shock in a sense to all of a sudden realize there's this going on, but there's also this feeling of peace that I can have while all of this is still going on. Now that's wild, but it's also really liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that idea of kind of decoupling that the two things have to go together.
Yeah.
And to me, I know for most of my life, it didn't like, well, of course they go together, right? Of course it goes together. And now, again, sometimes it still feels like, of course they go together, but about so many things now I'm able to see, right? I don't like that. And it's not that important, or that scares me. And okay, so it's not that I don't get scared. I don't get upset. I don't not like things, or I don't get frustrated or angry or whatever, but it doesn't, I think I heard the term first from you, right? Doing down well.
Mm.
Right.
I think
That
it might be from George, actually.
It was George. Oh,
yeah.
I attribute it to you. I heard it from you first. Just that idea that like the goal can't be to not get upset, to not be frustrated, right? Like I am not the Buddha, right? That can't be the goal.
Yeah.
I'm just a regular human living a regular life like everybody else. And in the midst of that, bad things happen. I feel lousy. I get upset. Terrible things happen in my world. I lose, important people, all the things that happen to humans. And it's like, how do I go through that? Because like this life's pretty extraordinary in the midst of all those tough things. And so to me, it's in some ways like the ultimate form of resilience, right? It's not that we don't feel bad. It's that the feeling bad doesn't make us feel bad.
Right. We don't care so much about the feeling.
That's right. Bad. That's right. We don't take it so seriously. Like, even though it feels like it's going to last forever, inside I know it's not. No matter how long it actually does last for, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tell a story that happened with my daughter, Gemma. This actually just happened yesterday. And she's 5, a little over 5. And when she was 3, she was bitten by a dog. And it was a neighborhood dog. And so it was like a friendly dog, and just for no reason we could discern, just kind of went at her. And it wasn't tragic, but, she was scared and it hurt, and it was, a dramatic thing. And ever since then, she used to love dogs, and now she doesn't like dogs, and she's always, hiding behind my leg and, screaming and running. Well, this was very upsetting to me because I love dogs and I don't want her to hate dogs and be afraid of dogs. So spent a lot of time just in the like, all right, well, she's going to get to it when she gets to it. And look, a lot of people hate dogs and are scared of dogs their whole lives. And if that's her, so be it. But whenever we see dogs, let's see if it's a friendly dog. And here's how you offer your hand. And, you ask the owner, is your dog friendly? And, just kind of modeling good dog behavior for her. Well, doesn't want to go near dogs ever. Until yesterday. We're at the beach. This actually happened. We're at the beach and tons of dogs running around. And for whatever reason, this little dog came over and Gemma started petting this dog. And she was a little like, behind me, but really wanted to do it. And like, Mommy, will you hold him for me? And, so I was holding the collar and, obviously the owner said fine. And she was petting him. She even sat down next to him and the dog was laying on her and Mommy licked me. And she was like all jazzed up about this dog. And inside myself, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, this is a total 180 from like literally the past, almost 2 years since this dog bite. And so sure enough, this happens for, 5-6 minutes and the dog runs off and that's the end of it. And she's, we're playing around on the beach and was trying to be really casual. And I said, you know, Gemma, that was so fun, you know, that dog came over. How was that? Was that fun for you? And she said, oh yeah, I like that dog. And I said, oh, that's interesting, because you used to not like dogs. And she said, oh yeah, I just decided I don't want to not like dogs anymore. That was it. I was like, oh, okay. And off she went, skipping down the beach. Like, literally, I just decided I don't want to not like dogs anymore. Right? Out of the mouths of babes. Like, those were literally her words. And I saw it in action. Now, how in that moment, why did she decide yesterday that she could do it? When every other, 4,000 times we've seen dogs in the past 2 years, she would not do it. I don't know. But in that moment, she saw, oh, I could do it different. And she did. And
it was easy for her. Yeah.
It was great. It was kind of like, yeah, I just decided. Whereas she couldn't have said that 3 days prior. She would have been, no. Yeah. So to me, it's like, it's what happens for all of us about any topic, right? The content of it doesn't matter. We see things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, of course that. Like, I could just do that. When just the day before, even the hour before, it seemed impossible. And I feel like for all of us, it happens all the time. Like, we change our minds.
Yes.
And, the idea that some things we change our mind about are really important and other things aren't. And it's like, well, who makes that up? Like, it's important that I, change my mind about what I want to have for dinner. That doesn't feel that important. But it's really important if I want to change my husband, right? Like, it says who? Some people need to change their husbands, right? Some people change where they live. Other people, like, I don't care where I live, right? Big things, little things, like what I have for dinner. Some people, like, really regimented about food. I need to have this for dinner. Like, again, no exceptions. Like, where's the line? If there's one line, there's 1,000 lines, and it can't work that way. Like, that doesn't make sense. So it's so comforting to know that, to me, right? It's so comforting to know that I'll see lots of things someday, maybe today, maybe on this call, maybe on this call, I'll see something that'll be like, oh my God, that's so helpful. I never saw that.
Yeah.
It happens we never know when it's going to happen.
And that example of Gemma is also such a great illustration. Like, when you were talking about how you were confounded by not liking vegetables and wanting to eat vegetables, and like you were trying to get yourself to like vegetables.
Right.
And that pressure was making it harder, making you feel worse. And then you felt better when you took the pressure off. But with Gemma, she wasn't trying to make herself like dogs. She was just living life where she was. And then all of a sudden she got a new thought that said, oh, I'm done with not liking dogs. I'd like to like dogs now.
That's right.
And that's how simply it works. But I think for many people, myself included, at times, we think we should be somewhere where we're not.
Yeah.
We think we shouldn't get upset about something. We think we shouldn't think something looks like an exception. And so we put this extra pressure on ourselves that then obviously increases the suffering, because it's just a judgment, it's a self-judgment. And so the two pieces of getting comfortable with where you're at, and also the hopefulness of knowing that the mind changes all the time in an instant. We just don't know when that's going to happen. And sometimes it happens incrementally, in a sense, like we start to kind of feel a little bit lighter about something. We might even not realize something's shifting. And sometimes it's like a big, like, oh, wow, that's a big shift. There's no right way, but wherever we're at is the right place.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever we see is what's right for us in this moment in time. And the more we can get comfortable with that, including our blind spots, and I'm speaking probably because I was one of those people, was trying to like fix my blind spots. Well, they're blind spots. I can't even see them. How am I going to fix them? But it's like I had this idea that somehow it was my responsibility to get rid of them. And that put an awful lot of pressure on myself, and ultimately had me feeling less peace of mind, less inner freedom, and still had my blind spots. So
yeah. And I think another topic, this idea of like, well, I should be in a different place, I know that I get stuck on, and many people I speak with get stuck on, is, well, it should happen faster. Right? Time, like that somehow I'm in control of time or the timing of things. And like Gemma, Like, I mean, I don't know. I thought maybe she'll be afraid of dogs forever till she's 10 or, I don't know what, but however long it takes is what it takes. And that somehow, if it doesn't happen on our timeline, it's wrong, it's not good enough, or it's never going to happen. Like, I mean, I know me, like I get so impatient sometimes, like my timeline somehow is meaningful. And so letting go of that is helpful too.
Yeah.
Right? That like, it's not like, it's not on my time.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things take the pressure off ourselves when we feel like, oh, if I was doing this better, it would be happening quicker. That's, oftentimes in this, it must be something wrong with me
Yeah.
that I'm not, more money, taller, thinner, whatever it is that we want to
Yeah.
have. It's like I must be doing something wrong,
Yeah.
and ultimately there is a natural unfolding that is happening for all of us, and when we stop putting the pressure on ourselves and stop the striving, we actually get to enjoy that more. And we get to enjoy what we do see. That was something else that I would do, is that I would look at all of the places that I thought needed improving, and I would forget about being grateful for the ways that I could enjoy my life and the things that were pleasant and enjoyable, because I was so focused on what I would consider what was not good enough or what was wrong, that I would miss out on just the day to day natural enjoyment, because I was, the things that I was focusing on that didn't look good in my mind, which is just made up, that's just thought, they became magnified in my awareness. And the other things that were doing quite well, like they shrunk down as if they weren't even important at all. And so this understanding really helped me to flip that around, and as you're saying, get comfortable with, yeah, I don't like vegetables, or yeah, I don't like feeling shame, or whatever it is that I don't like, but I don't feel shame every day. I didn't need to worry about that. It's going to come up from time to time, but I can enjoy my life with knowing that I'm going to get caught up and feel feelings I don't like every once in a while, and it's not going to be the end of the world. And so
Yeah.
that's the level of freedom that lets us enjoy wherever we're at. We don't need to be enlightened or self-realized to be able to enjoy our lives. And I didn't know that was true before, to be quite honest. I really thought that I had to get somewhere in order to be able to enjoy life properly. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, no, I can enjoy life as it is and still be crazy, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I even, as you're talking, I feel like I'm sure I've heard Linda or George or, some other person say this, but this idea of like, we all are enlightened. We just don't know it.
Right.
Right. It's not that actually I'm not enlightened. Like there's no
Yes,
exception to that either. Right. Sid
that's
Banks
true.
or Buddha or
Yeah.
this or whoever, right? Like actually no different than anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, they had these miraculous experiences, but it could have been anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Could be me tomorrow, could be you, could be anybody on this call.
Yeah.
It could be me
Yeah.
every and every day. Like to me, what happened with Gemma with that dog yesterday, like that was miracle level, right? That was like such a moment that it's like, I mean, it was amazing just to see that happen.
Yeah.
And for me, again, and it I hope people see that, this idea of eating vegetables is kind of a trite example, but it was quite meaningful to me
Yeah.
that because it's something I've really been upset about and struggled with for my entire life. And just realizing like, oh, it's not the thing that changes. The thing doesn't change. The thing out there is not relevant. What's happening here is relevant. So I like them or don't like them, but it doesn't bother me that I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I'm sitting around loving vegetables. I promise you I'm not. But I don't think about it. Like I don't spend time and energy on it. Like at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
That's
and
freedom.
that would have never occurred to me before either, that I didn't have to. Like I get to choose where I put my time and energy. Like I get to choose where I put my attention. That I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's huge. That for me, like, oh, that can be happening and I don't have to pay attention to it. Okay. Like that's interesting. Right?
Be
That's
okay.
curious to
Yeah.
me. Like, but I didn't know I could do that. And now I do. So if I can do it with one thing, could I do it with another thing? I could. I mean, maybe not today, but one day.
Yeah. I mean, I love the hopefulness of knowing that the mind has the capacity to have new thought and realization that can just be a total game changer, whether it's about, murder, dogs, vegetables, whatever we're feeling we're up against. to know that we have that innate capacity to have a new fresh insight that's going to help us see it differently. And it's not about, like you're saying, it doesn't change the thing out there. We can't change, when someone's killed, that doesn't change, but our internal experience can evolve and shift profoundly as a result of that. And when we're not able to see it, and when we are suffering, and when we're caught up, and when we're gripped, when we understand that we don't need to worry about that, like that's what I really hear you pointing to, Rachel, in a strong way, that it's like we don't need to get worked up and add more pressure and stress to that. Like that's okay to get caught up and gripped at times. And we also don't need to think about being caught up and gripped when we are. And then we won't be. And then at some point, we may or may not see something fresh that has us not get gripped by that thing anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I see I think at least one question's coming in the chat. So why don't we open it up now for questions? Are you open for that?
Oh, yeah, great.
So why don't we open it up for questions? And I'm going to ask you, because I can't see everybody, to use the raised hand button. If you click the participants button, there we go. So Jackie, hang on just a sec. Jackie, you're going to have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute. There you go. Hi, Jackie.
Okay, I got it. Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I have one of those yes, but what about this exception?
Yeah.
I'm sure we all do.
I mean, I have a lot of them. Yeah.
Okay. Oh God. I don't want to go into a big long story, but over this last year, or about a year and a half, I was I was told that I had breast cancer, and so they did a lumpectomy, and then 2 doctors told me I did, and then they sent me to the cancer center, and the cancer center doctors told me that I don't. Well, now I'm coming up on my 6-month mammogram this month, and I'm scared, of course, and the anxiety that because they found something 6 months ago that hadn't shown up before. My husband's always gone with me to all of my appointments. He's, been there to hold my hand during the procedures and whatever. When I go in this month, when I finally get the courage to make my appointment to go in, I have to wear a mask. They won't let my husband go in. So I'm facing this one by myself.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to tell me. It might be good news. They might tell me, well, you're fine for a year, or maybe you should have a biopsy. I don't know. So is that, and I know that there's no exceptions, but.
Well, I wonder, could I ask you a question about it?
Sure.
Because I think on a human level, right, probably everybody on the call here could be like, oh yeah, that would be scary. And oh my gosh, your husband can't come in, and that'll be hard. And of course, I mean, I can't imagine anybody wouldn't have all those feelings. But I'm wondering for you, what makes it feel like an exception? Because those would be very normal human feelings. I think I would feel the exact same way if I was in your position. I think, of course, I would be scared and worried and upset and angry and all the things. And what about it feels like an exception to you?
Just the fact that it feels like it's coming from the outside in.
Mm.
And this has been a fast 6 months. I mean, and the closer it gets, the more nervous and anxious I feel, and then I've been crying over the last couple days to even thinking about doing it. And I asked my primary care doctor last Friday. We did a virtual appointment with her, and she said if it was just a screening, I could probably put it off. But because of I went through the surgery and the cancer diagnosis, because my biopsy came back kind of weird, and this time I don't know, I'm just really my husband says, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I don't know what they're going to find this time. I didn't think they'd find anything 6 months ago because I had the surgery."
Yeah. Sounds like there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
Dealing with a lot of unknowns.
I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of it. And
Mhm.
then with this COVID, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
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 So Jackie, when you said about is it okay if I jump in, Rachel?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So with seeing the exception as it looks like it's something that's causing you to feel the way that you're feeling. Sorry, I've lost Jackie from my screen here. Where's she gone?
Oh,
Um, there you are. Thank you. So it's like, and I can absolutely relate to that in terms of it really does feel like something's going on outside, and then we have an emotional experience inside, and it looks like it's a direct relationship. But whenever it feels that way for me, what I'm missing is all of the thinking that's going on about that situation.
mhm.
And when I realized that, oh, well, actually, what I'm feeling is all of the thinking that I'm having about that situation, then I realized that, oh, it still is coming from the inside, because there'll be times when you're still going to have to go to the mammogram, but it's not on your mind and you're feeling fine. You're not crying in those moments. And there's
Right.
times where it's on your mind and you're anxious about it and you're thinking about those anxious thoughts, and then you have a certain feeling. And I think that this can be confusing for people, because there's sort of this idea that, well, if we understand that it's coming from the inside out, then we wouldn't have bad feelings, because when we know it's coming from us, we would certainly not do that. But that's just not how it works, because we're not able, like, this is not a thought management system. I thought this was going to be a thought management system where I would be like, oh, I'm just going to not have any of those bad thoughts, and then I'll always feel the way I want to feel. But that's almost, so punishing, because one, it doesn't work, and two, it's exhausting to do that. And so it's Rachel's saying, when the freedom and no exceptions is actually seeing that, oh, this is how it works, and I can relax into the experience I'm having, knowing how it works. Not, I can control and shape the experience I'm having by knowing how it works.
Mhm.
But when you relax into it, you kind of naturally allow the mind to settle, and that naturally lets those thoughts to settle more easily, and they just kind of move along, at some point in time. And so it looks like it's coming from the outside, but when you really sort of look at the big picture, you realize, well, no, it's actually still happening the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And
And
there's
sorry.
there's days when I don't even think about it. And then
Yes.
my doctor told me I could always call the place that I have to go to. And I've been there so many times over this last couple of years that I know everybody there, and they'll take good care of me whether my
Yeah.
husband's in there or not.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's
So,
helpful. That's a useful thought, as you're remembering, like, yeah, they really care about me. They know me. I know them. I feel safe with
and they
them.
know about my anxiety and
Yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah. So, see, that's where, when the mind relaxes, all of a sudden these other kinds of thoughts come in that are really useful and helpful to you. But
yeah,
when we get gripped about in our anxious thinking, in our scared thinking, it's helpful when we understand it's coming from the inside, because if we think it's coming from outside, we can't change that. Right? You're going to go and do your mammogram because you need to do that, so that's not going to change until it's
right.
done. But with the nature of how thought works, thought is going to come and go, just like you said. Some days you don't even think about it. So there's relief and freedom in knowing that the suffering is actually coming from something that is very movable and changeable in an instant. So you don't have to be a victim to the mammogram, and you don't even have to be a victim to your own thinking, because it will naturally move along. And that's where it gets so much easier to be comfortable in whatever your experience you're having. But it doesn't mean, this understanding does not mean you're only going to have good experiences and you're not going to have anxious experiences or sad experiences or angry experiences. It doesn't
Oh
mean
no.
that, right?
No, because that's all part of part of the whole thing. So,
Exactly. But
but
thanks for
yeah, okay.
sharing.
I appreciate you guys talking to me and helping
Yeah,
me with this.
we're sending you love as you
Absolutely.
prepare. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. Take care.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let's see who's next. Uh, Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
I
Dennis Furman. Hi.
uh
We can hear
well I
you. We
haven't
can't see you. I don't know if that's on purpose.
let me get it on. Okay.
There you are. Oh,
Hey, Dennis.
hi.
Well, I had a comment and it just occurred to me as I was listening to you in the beginning and I just realized um and this is to be helpful, I hope. And what I see is that when you said that and correct me if I'm wrong, that the three principles are an explanation how humans create their experience. Well, that is not
Sorry,
true.
I'm just going to mute someone here. Sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
That is not true.
Okay,
The
please
three
go ahead
principles,
and clarify.
the three principles are not how humans create their experience. For me, what makes sense is that the three principles how our true self creates a human experience.
Mm,
And so so when you say it the other way, it's in the wrong direction because
got it.
it's outside.
Got it.
And when you talk about mind, that's your true self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how your true self creates your experience of being a human. And if you see that, your to me, your explanations will be much more profound because I've just started talking about what I've been learning in the last couple of weeks. And I see the difficulty it is in to try to tell a human being that this is how you're, whatever, when all you have to tell them is this is how your true self is. So the direction is really important in terms of helping other human beings understand their experience of what it is and where it comes from and what they are as human beings versus trying to explain to a human being how they experience life, because human beings don't experience life. Their human being does not experience life. It's only the true self that can experience life. And I thought that should, and I can see that I see even I just was approaching it that way, and it makes it so much more difficult.
I know, I appreciate your distinction and it's accurate. Like I 100% agree. And so I agree that I did not phrase that in a way that it truly works. Because as you're saying, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and the three principles are spiritual in nature. They are not part of this world of form. And so I 100% agree, and thank you for the clarification.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
Dennis.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing. Was that it, Dennis?
Yeah, that was
Okay,
it.
thank you. All right. So next we're going to go to Kathy. I'm asking you to unmute. I don't know, with some people I can unmute and some people I can't.
I know. The power of the mute button, huh?
That's right. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Rohini. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Rachel, it was interesting when you said earlier to Jackie, and Jackie, I'm just saying that because something came up in me. This really is more about me than you. When you said, well, anybody would feel that way. And it was funny because I wouldn't, my nature is I'd put up my dukes and I'd fight it out. And I would not, I would not succumb to anything, right? And again, it's not that I'm right. It's just that that's my nature. It's like, I'll take an Uber there if I have to, and I'll do this, and I'll knock it out, and I'll knock it out of the ballpark, and it's not it's that, you know, when you said it's not a thought management system, and even in that moment, what I saw was I was observing my patterns of behavior. I was able to observe how the unsettledness for me, when I become fearful or confused, I don't get depressed. I go out. I don't go in, right? So it's still the same level of, I don't know what's going to happen. There's uncertainty afoot. There's something that I'm not sure of, so I better get busy. I mean, that's really my nature. So when I started coming into the consciousness part of the three principles, the awareness of it, I was able to count to 3 and look at my behavior as the gentleman said before, kind of like the spirit in me saw how the human was acting out. And my kind of growth, and this is I really never thought having a sense of well-being was a goal. I'll just say it. I never thought of well-being as a goal. Well-being was a pacifier. It was like being put in a timeout so that you could come back in and fight out the rest of the days, right? Climb that mountain, scale that hill. So my question, and I, you know, I appreciate all the time that you get to work with me on this, Rohini, is really the release of habits without judging myself, right? So I go into observation and I see myself, and there are times I say, isn't that cute? And there's other times where it robs me of that peace, that it's like it's foreign to my mind to think that well-being is like, that's my goal, well-being. You know, I'd rather be skinny and rich, but, you know, or and healthy and living forever, and, you know, or would I? So again, it's like when the consciousness comes up against the habit of thinking, and not that it's a thought management system. It's a what? If it's not a thought management system, if I'm not supposed to beat myself into better behavior, what do I do when the habit, the actions start flaring up? I guess that's, you know.
Is that a real question?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really prided myself on being type A. I loved it. Are you kidding me? I was deals on heels through the 80s. And so I just thought that was what you went for. That was what all the self-help books were for, you know? And so now to sit there and settle into a sense of well-being, no matter what, and I do it. I mean, I do it and I love it. I just know that there's times that it grates against a habitual behavior.
Why is that a problem?
I guess because I'm comparing myself to people who are better than me. I am, you know? Yeah. And you know why? Because I want to coach women. I want to sit there and I want to be a midwife to people who want to be the very best part of themselves. I don't want to be a football coach to people who, you know, need to run more drills to get a better life. I want to watch people unfold in front of me. And so I don't want to have, or I don't know, I just want to bend with I was listening to Angus's tape on Rewilding last night of the river, you know, and all I kept thinking was the river flows through it. I want to be the river just flows through the land. I want to be the river that runs through it. And so I guess, Rachel, I'm looking at myself in that field of consciousness and becoming aware of my behavior. That's all.
Yeah. I know. I really appreciate that. And what I love is what you shared very first, which was, you know, talking to Jackie and thinking, oh, well, anybody would feel that way, anxious. And here's a person who wouldn't feel that way. And that's exactly the point, right? Is that therefore it can't be about the thing out there. Because if it was about the thing out there, then everybody would feel the same. And we don't. we don't feel the same. We don't feel the same as anybody else. We don't even feel the same, even in the midst of the, 4, 5, 6 minutes we talked to Jackie. She didn't feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even in the few minutes you've been talking, you've gotten frustrated, and then you've been happy, and then you've been like, it's okay. And then, oh, it's not okay. I mean, it can go in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And that's all we have. So if you want to coach women and you want to help people, then, I mean, this is just me talking. It's like, wow, then that all has to be part of the deal, right? Like what's wrong with that? Like, okay, yeah, we're up, we're down, we're backwards, we're sideways, we're upset, we're anxious, we're not, we feel great, we're totally resilient today, I'm in the dumps.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Yeah.
Right?
We're not fixed points on the horizon.
Through all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and what occurs to me to share, Kathy, is that the habit, like when you say you're witnessing the habit, whatever the habit might be, the habit isn't causing you to feel any way. It's not the habit that's doing anything to you. You know, it still works the same way. It's still you're thinking about whatever it is you're doing. And when you're in a good mood, it's kind of cute. And when you're not in a good mood, it drives you crazy. But you get to see like, oh, the variable is not the habit. The variable is where you're at in your state of mind as you're observing it. And that you don't need to fix that. That's going to change by itself. That's the hopefulness that Rachel's pointing to. And like the mind just naturally shifts. And that the natural state is one where the mind relaxes and is open. Like that's the natural state. And eventually the mind goes there at some point in the day. Usually we sleep at some point or at another point in the day when we relax. But I think it would be really key to realize like it's not, the problem is not the habit.
Wow. Wow. I mean, really, because the amount of either self-flagellation for not breaking a habit or more direction in order to get a habit is a full-time game.
Yeah, exactly. So you can really let that go and see that, oh yeah, sometimes you're able to be neutral about it and sometimes you're not. And when you're not, you suffer. And when you're neutral, you don't. But it's not the habit.
Okay.
There's no exceptions.
Yeah.
No exceptions. I love it. I love it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll go to Ellen. Hi. Oh, sorry. I tried to unmute you and I think you muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes,
Ellen?
we did it together.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Rohini. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, I love the topic of no exceptions, and I'm reflecting on how physical health was such an exception for me for a long time. And what's been fresh for me is that physical symptoms are kind of like they're physical symptoms are symptoms of the physical, and emotional symptoms are symptoms of the mind. And if I see that there's no exceptions with anxiety and depression and frustration and anger, then it's helped me to see, well, they're just reflecting where my thinking is focused. Like physical symptoms are just reflecting where my thinking is focused, and how easy it is to feel like there's exceptions still, for all of us. And Rachel,
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, COVID is not an exception.
Right.
I feel so compelled to share with you, like, this is what the other side of COVID looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I didn't have a positive test because I don't believe that the tests are reliable enough, and because my doctor said that, I wasn't like sick enough, but like I had all the symptoms, and my ride through it was I can't even believe how gentle it was
Mm.
because of this understanding.
Great.
I knew it was temporary.
Yeah.
I just knew. There was no question. For me, it was a temporary experience. Even if I ended up in the hospital on a ventilator and died, still going to be a temporary experience. I don't think I thought about that before this moment, but I don't know. I'm just really compelled to let people know that, like, the fear, like the peace of mind is the best thing for the immune system.
Mm.
The best thing for the immune system. And whether it's COVID or cancer or anything in between, like, there's no exceptions.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen. I'm so glad you're better. I think, my experience in talking to many people over the past few months is that this quarantine situation has brought up for many people lots of different challenges, some physical, people who've been sick, and some
No.
Hi.
my daughter wanted to show me her toy, excuse me.
Yes.
That it doesn't matter if it's a physical challenge, like an illness, which many people have been through. There's economic problems. There's just basic fear and anxiety problems. There's employment issues. There's so many things that this has brought up. I know for people in my world, people I talk to, me some days. And it's, as you're saying, it's so helpful to know, right? There's no exceptions, even when things seem dire. Right. And the reality from a human standpoint could even be that they are dire. And again, as we're saying, right, this hopefulness of somewhere in it, there's another aspect I can't see that could allow me greater peace of mind, regardless of the challenge and the level of challenge. Mm-hmm. There's still no exceptions, right? As George used to say, right, there's no hierarchy of problems. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that, and I'm so glad that you are well.
Yeah. I mean, can I say something else?
Sure.
I just want to also say, like, COVID isn't that problem either, because my experience, I don't know, like, I could be like coming from friggin' outer space, maybe I'm the only person on the planet that sees this, but like before the lockdown, before any of this, I had certain areas that I was really comfortable in the unknown and certain areas that I was very uncomfortable in the unknown. And the unknown, like, I am so certain there's nothing known in my life right now or in the world. Nothing. There's nothing certain. There's nothing known. And the comfort that I see from that is extraordinary. And so I have to, like, really question, like, it's not COVID that's doing anything to us. It's our thinking that, I don't think the world should be the way it is. But I don't know, there's so much, and I don't mean to be, I hope I'm not, I don't know, whatever, I am whatever I am. But
I appreciate what you're sharing, Ellen, and I agree that for me too, I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but the lack of, control and this whole idea of like, oh, we think we know how things are going to be. And all of a sudden, basically the world is upside down. The entire planet, right, is inside out and backwards in ways, 6 months ago, we would have said were impossible. And I agree, there's a tremendous level of freedom in thinking like, oh, I don't actually have control over anything. On one level, that could be really scary. And on another level, like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I don't have to worry so much. I don't have to try so hard. It's just whatever's going to be is what's going to be. And so I think there is you know, again, this to me goes between, again, that kind of form and formless, right? And human and spiritual. And those are, you know, they're difficult things to discuss. And yet I appreciate you bringing it forward. And I agree. I've had many of those same kind of thoughts and realizations. And it points to the same thing, which is like, we never know what it's going to be for anyone, right? Some people are really suffering through this, and you have had a very profound, uplifting experience through this. And that's exactly the point, is how subjective everything is, that some people, this will be the worst time of their lives, and some people it won't. And who's to predict and who's to say, and it's all fine, right? Somebody else will have an amazing experience with something else that you might think, whatever.
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. And just one final comment. I think that the experience that I'm having is really been deepened because I so clearly see and feel and experience the support of mind in this. Like during this whole thing, also my house was on the market. You know what? No one wanted to see my house until the day I was better. And then the phone rang. Can we show your house? I mean, like simple, but evidence of mind.
Thanks,
so, okay, I'll get off my little thing, but I just felt so compelled to, and Rohini, if there's anything you have to share, I'm happy to hear, but.
Well, the only thing that comes forward for me, Ellen, is just the feeling from which you're coming. Like, it's clear you've had a huge insight. And I just feel that coming through you. And I'm sure that's just going to continue to unfold because there's a level of freedom and joy. Like, it's just coming through you. And
it's palpable.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And the fact that you just have to share it, like that's another sign. It's like, it's just coming through you. You can't contain it. And I just encourage you to, you know, keep sharing what you're seeing and let that unfold inside of you and you know, to see what else it reveals to you, because it sounds very profound.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to continue the conversation, I'm just like an open, accessible book on that. So
yeah, thank you, Ellen. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you for being here and opening the space for people out that don't live in LA.
Yeah, that's right. It's fun. It's great to see you. Yeah. All right, next we're going to go to Cheryl Bush.
Yeah, I saw your hand up.
There you go. And I need to ask you to unmute yourself. There we go. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Two things that have come up for me. I'm in another group also of women, and we have to rate our self-esteem in ourselves, you know, and during this time of our care of ourselves and things like that. And there's mostly young girls in the group, and they rated themselves like a 3, 3.5, and blah, blah, blah. And I rated myself a 0. And I was honest. I really was in appreciation of myself. And everybody said, oh, you're too hard on yourself. You have to, you know, I've been through a lot. So compared to how I used to be, I just am so far away from that. You know, I had a lot of trauma and things like that. And I don't know, I was just thinking about the way that when you let your thoughts go, and also I've been in by myself for 11 weeks now. So I've really gotten to see my habits, see myself, and see how kind of like I care, but I don't care. So I want to figure out a way to make myself care more. How's that? And then I have a second part to that question.
Well, care about what?
Yeah, care about what?
Myself.
You mean take care of yourself?
I'm so used to taking care of other people that I never really thought about that. Like I was always running, that I never really thought about, you know, like I would run to an exercise class or whatever, but it was always like, okay, it starts at 5:15, ends at 6:45. You have to be there, you know? And now it's been 11 weeks and I have all of this time. I haven't scheduled it. And I find that like at 9 o'clock at night, I'm eating something just to have some protein in me, and in the morning, but I'm not giving myself what I would give others. So that's a problem for me. You can smile, but you have to help me with it.
You know, I was saying, Rachel, do you want to go first, or?
You can go ahead.
So, you know, it's reminding me a little bit of what Rachel was saying about her issue with vegetables. Like, she wanted to like vegetables, but she couldn't make herself like vegetables. And it's like, you want to take better care of yourself, but it seems like you're having a hard time making yourself take better care of yourself. You see that there's a possibility, but you haven't really seen what's going to allow that to come into fruition at this point in time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, yeah.
And the more pressure you put on yourself to try and change your behavior, the worse you're going to feel, and the less likely you're going to be to take good care of yourself.
I found that the last few weeks I have been like that.
Right? You've been putting more pressure and it doesn't work, right? Just like Rachel couldn't force herself to eat vegetables until she had a new thought about them.
Right, right. Like I never concentrated on myself before.
Yeah, but and it sounds like this time you have you know, you're not rushing around the way that you were before. You're getting time to slow down. But I'm wondering if how you're taking care of yourself now, if that can be good enough for now without any pressure or judgment on it not being good enough. Can that be good enough, and can you enjoy how you're doing it now, knowing that at some point you're probably going to have a new thought come in that's going to say, oh, well, what about adding this to my daily routine or something? Because
Right.
you have an intention that sounds like a clear intention. You're just not quite sure how to go about it. And all I'm saying is that putting pressure on yourself to try and get there when you're not there is not going to help you get there. But if you can kind of enjoy where you're at, then at some point you'll probably have a fresh thought about it, just like Rachel did around how she was going to find a way to eat more vegetables.
Right. But I mean, it's been 11 weeks of me just, I don't know, watching myself where I feel like, okay, here I am hard on myself.
Yeah.
I could have been so productive.
See, but that's the optional part. Like if you are wanting to take better care of yourself, the possibility, and again, you don't have to take it, but the possibility is to have an open mind and be curious about that, and to not look at how you're not taking care of yourself, just to be like, well, how am I going to take care of myself, and have that be good enough exactly where you're at.
Right. Like I speak to my friends, and this one is taking up baking, this one's taking up a foreign language, this one's taking up this and that, and I'm, you know, just, well, I'm listening to you 4 hours a day, so I guess that's, you know, positive to learn to rethink. But you know, it still feels, you know, when they start with their languages and their baking and all of this stuff, that, you know, it just.
But again, your inclination was to do this and not take a baking class, or whatever. It's like you just can just follow that and really trust the unfolding of what you're inclined to do. Like whenever we try and push ourselves, that's not coming from our wisdom. That's coming from our ego telling ourselves we need to be better and work harder and do more. That's not the self-care you're talking about, right? That's not self-care. But allowing yourself to be exactly where you're at and being curious to see what else emerges in that, to me, that feels very gentle.
Okay.
And what occurs to me along, I think, the same lines is this idea that what if you're doing exactly what you should be doing, right? Those people, maybe the best thing for them is baking, and maybe the best thing for you is not baking, right? That maybe that's exactly that you hanging out, not doing much of anything is caring. I mean, I don't know that, but I think it's also a possibility that that could be a form of relaxation, of slowing down, of rest. And it occurs to me a story that really, really stuck in my mind that Linda once told about when her parents passed away many years ago. And she was devastated by this. And she was a, 50 or 60-year-old woman, she was
Right.
a grown adult. And she found herself, smoking and drinking at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. And she doesn't smoke or drink. And she was kind of scared for herself, but just thought she was in so much grief and so much anguish that it was the only thing she could think of to do was to be, sitting alone, smoking and drinking in the middle of the afternoon. And that one day this was occurring, I don't know how long it had been going on for, but, George, her husband, walked in and saw her. And she had a moment of like, oh shit, George just saw me
Right.
smoking and drinking, and it's, 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. And he said, hey, honey, and went on about his business. And the fact that he had faith that she would figure it out, and he didn't get in her business about smoking and drinking and you're falling off the rails and everything else, helped her. And over the course of several months of this behavior, it slowly faded.
Right.
And she found her way out of it. And it wasn't on anybody's time, and it wasn't anything she meant to do. It was just it was the best she could do given what she was up against. And
Right.
she found her way through it without having to try. It sorted itself out because she saw George have faith in her, and she had enough of the understanding to know, okay, I'll figure this out somehow, even though smoking and drinking alone ain't the best idea. I'll figure it out. And she did.
Right. Like,
And
I
so-
had my house for sale before the pandemic, and I got an incredible offer, and I didn't take it. So for 2 months, everybody's been on my back that I didn't take it. I mean, I didn't know about the pandemic coming. I didn't know what was going on, And I mean, I just should have taken it. So for 2 months, it's taken me a long time to get rid of it in my head. And then I was thinking that maybe it's because I needed to be alone in my house.
Yeah.
I haven't been here for 3 years. My ex-husband was living here, and I renovated it. Maybe I needed to be in it and not be kicked out. Like he kicked, me out. Maybe I needed to re-enter.
Yeah. There's
As
something about your different kinds of thoughts around it, right? I can beat myself up and I should have taken it, and the pandemic and this and that, versus
Right.
maybe I needed to be here, right? It's like, as Linda would say, right, where you look is where you go. If you look in this direction, you'll feel pretty lousy. If you look in this direction, you might learn something. And both are arbitrary. I mean, they're both just thoughts in your mind. Who's to say which is the better one to choose? But you do get to choose.
Right.
There's
And
no,
you choose a more gentle one.
that would be my recommendation. But
Right. Okay. And then my other question is, I've been working with Aviva, in Israel. And she's really been, because I've been stuck in cement for 3 years. I've had a really hard time since my divorce, blah, blah, blah. He gaslighted me. I mean, the whole business. And then I've been working with her because I haven't been able to really move in 3 years, And someone else recommended another person for me to speak to today. And she's been really teaching me about letting my thinking go, which I think is really helpful. And we've been kidding around and laughing again, and I haven't laughed in a really long time. And I called this other psychologist who trauma and grief are trauma and gaslighting are his thing, And I asked him how long it would take, do you think, for me to get over these situations? And I was just thinking to myself, when he said the number, I started shaking and really panicking. He says, about 5 to 10 years of you working with me a few days a week. And there I was thinking that, and then I said, but I don't want to go back to those things. Like you said, we have to revisit everything. And then like with Aviva, it's like not visiting it, but just
Mhm.
taking the steps to move forward.
Yeah.
So
What
I just found it interesting, the two dynamics.
Did it make sense to you when he said 5 to 10 years?
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sounds like
no,
you're clear.
Yeah,
Sounds
I'm
like
like,
you're
did
clear.
it make sense to you? So, okay, great.
I know, but he kind of scared me, you know?
But you have your own wisdom, and just what you said, you're working with Aviva, you're feeling light, you're not identifying with those thoughts in the same way. Like you trust that. Like that's your wisdom letting you know. And when you hear that other
Right.
information, like that doesn't make sense. Like you
And
know.
I clearly didn't want to go backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to hear the story again myself.
Yeah, that's right.
So why do I have to repeat it to somebody
Yeah.
else?
So
Well,
And
the
then,
beauty is you
you
don't.
know,
Yeah,
that's
right,
you don't.
right. And then he
So-
says, oh, but you haven't grieved enough. I'm like, why do I have to spend 5 years of my life grieving?
Yeah.
Sounds like you
Yeah, I
have
think-
an answer, Cheryl.
Exactly. I think you're pretty
Yeah.
clear. Follow your own knowing and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Right. So if you just cover up, not cover up, but if you can let go of what's happened to you, then it's okay. Because he's saying it stays in your brain.
It's thought. It's thought that gets identified with. It's not a thing. It's just thought that you identify with it sometimes, and other times you don't identify with it. It comes and it goes. That's how it
Okay.
works. Right? No
Right.
exceptions.
So eventually it'll just kind of
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's been a long time, you know. All I kept on thinking of, oh, he has some kids he has to send to private school or something.
Yeah, that's right. He's got a 10-year plan.
Right.
Well, thanks so
I know,
much
but to
for
say something like that to somebody, really, I mean, it was just, you know,
yeah. Well, you know for yourself, and that's what's important.
yeah, I guess so. I started shaking, you know, like what, you know? But anyway, so thank you. Those were my two. But you see, but that has to do with my self-esteem. Because if my self-esteem was higher, then when he said that automatically to me on the phone, I would have just said, you know,
You got there anyway. You got there anyway. See that it's like we can get shaken by things. I can get shaken by things, but you ultimately got clear. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. That's all that matters.
right.
Doesn't
Right.
matter that you were shaking.
Yeah, there's no point thinking up reasons to buy into the wrong story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. He just, and I said, how do you know me that well? You know, you don't
That's
even
right.
wonder. But anyway,
Oh,
thank
you
you.
take good care,
because
Cheryl.
I really wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You take care.
When you need that type of, but your therapy is like so much different. It's
Very
you know,
different. It's a very different way of working. And it
feels
sounds like it's working.
but it feels too easy.
See, the proof is in the pudding in a sense. You're feeling better. That's what's important,
Right.
right? Go with
Right.
that. Trust that. Trust what you're
Okay.
experiencing.
Not what other people think I should experience.
Exactly.
Okay. Like he said, have you really cried over it? You know, have you really? And I said, no, you know. He said, well, we have to get you to really release over it. I said, I don't want to release.
You'll follow your path, but it sounds like he's not part of your path.
Right.
All right.
Thank
Take care,
you.
Cheryl. Bye.
You too.
All right. Let's see. We're going to go to Laurel next. Hi, Laurel.
Hello, Rohini and Rachel and everyone on the
Hi.
call. Thank you so much. So a couple of days ago, I was in a wonderful, expansive space of no resistance, of a beautiful open heart, and was able to accomplish a whole lot. And every day I have an enormous list because I'm looking to up-level the conditions of my life. And then the day after the expansiveness, I was in a really low place, and today in an even lower one. And when I'm in depression, I find it debilitating. I can't get much done. And so I did my best just to relax with it and read a book, which is certainly pleasant. However, I've got all this stuff to do, and it's not feeling bad that I feel bad when I can't really take the steps I need to move ahead when I'm in that kind of depleted condition. It's frustrating, and I didn't understand Dennis's, I think it was Dennis who said that it is our mind, it is our, what I would call my divine self that is creating these experiences. I can't understand why my true self, which I feel so connected with, would look to create misunderstandings and misperceptions that create uncomfortable feelings and get in the way of my doing what I know feels good. So I wonder if you can reflect on that with me and for me.
I guess the first thing that just comes to my mind, and I know we're almost out of time here, but is to try not to get hung up on the semantics of things, because trying to put into the right words things that by nature are very difficult to explain and to understand can just kind of be a distraction. I guess that would be the first thing. But as for your, lack of productivity when you're feeling low, is that what you're saying feels upsetting or challenging, or?
Well, it certainly gets in the way. I guess what feels so challenging is the pain, the grief, the pain, the regret. It just feels kind of devastating. And it seems that I swing between ecstatic and despondent. And, I much prefer ecstatic, needless to say, but I don't know how to get okay with the despondent when it gets in the way of my accomplishing what I feel is important for me to be able to share more of my work in the world so that it becomes a source of greater joy for me and greater prosperity.
Yeah. I'm struck just even as you're speaking, how much awareness you have around it. You have a lot of perspective on the ends of the spectrum. Now, you may not have control over where you find yourself on it at any given moment, but you do seem quite aware that there is one. Is that accurate? You see
yes, that? Yes, what is it called? Metacognition. I am very aware of every thought that crosses my mind and how it impacts me. And how, though I know the open-hearted place is where the joy is, that doesn't always prevent me from contracting and feeling a lot of negative thinking.
Yeah, me too.
That's helpful to know.
Yeah, no, I really mean it. I mean, I really mean it. Me too. Definitely those moments occur in my life often, to be quite frank, of contraction, fear, anxiety, upset, frustration, whatever they are. And I'm even in those moments and I can't do it all the time, when I have the awareness that I'm in the flow of that spectrum of like, ecstatic and totally devastated, that's helpful. That alone, knowing that is what is at play and nothing more. It's helpful.
Yeah. I have such a strong sense of purpose. And when I feel impeded with taking the action steps to bring it to a wider audience, it's part of the devastation. Like the word entelechy, which I learned long before USM, which is an actuality versus a potentiality, and also the inner compulsion to self-actualize, like in the acorn to become the oak. I mean, I'm now in my senior years. I'm in great health, which is wonderful. I may last yet a long time, but I have the piece of the puzzle for how to accelerate the awakening of consciousness globally. And it has to do with the English language and the recognition that it's filled with biases that are like viruses that come from another age, and that we can collectively upgrade it. And now more and more thought leaders are saying we need to do something about the language, but I don't know anyone else who can demonstrate why and how. And so getting my work out to the right people is a compulsion. And when I am sunk with depression, I'm just leveled.
Mm-hmm. See, Laurel, I feel like there's, that the black and white, as if, like, I don't know that this isn't all part of the entelechy, the high and the low. I'm sure there's learning in all of it, and sort of to think that somehow you have to only be in the high to express your true nature, to me doesn't feel accurate. And I get that you don't like the experience, but if it's okay to not like the experience and just be with the experience, because you always come back up again. Like, you come back up at some point. And to me, this is sort of getting comfortable with the fullness of your experience, and not minding so much when you have to have downtime. Like, my guess is when you're in that expansive place and doing so much that your body needs some time to rest afterwards. That's okay, right? And to read a book, like, that sounds like a lovely way to spend the day. Yeah. Take care of yourself. And rather than it being an either or, good and bad, it's like, yeah, this is all part of, this is what allows you to get into that expansive state and do the things that you do there. And then you have to kind of regroup. It seems like that's how you work.
That's a really helpful perspective. Thank you.
And then you can kind of be like, oh yeah, this is when I kind of regroup, and then I'm going to have another spurt of expansiveness. And that's like just seeing like, oh yeah, that's how it works for you. Not everybody's going to be the same way, but this is how because I've heard you share this experience, and I don't think it's an experience that needs to be fixed. I think it's just, if you're like, oh, this is what allows you to do what you do. Just like we sleep every night,
Yeah. Thank you. That is a really, really wonderful and helpful perspective. And I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I just want to share, since Rachel mentioned everything's upside down and backward, just a stanza from my fairyography, where my little, my elemental self says, I was born in upside down town to the king and queen of backward land. I spoke a foreign language, which they had to twist to understand. The king was sowing sorrow and the queen was reaping grief. I held my dreams, but lost my way, confused beyond belief. Anyway.
Oh, beautiful words.
Yeah.
Beautiful words.
Thank you.
You are a word magician.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I so appreciate it. Thank you both.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know we're 5 minutes over, Rachel. Do you have to, but we have one last question. I don't know if we have time for that. Is that okay? So we'll take Patricia, we'll take you as the last question then. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, Patricia Kelly.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Hi.
Okay. I don't want to waste your time.
No, you're not wasting our time.
I have so many thoughts and I don't communicate well. I'm not beautiful. My words aren't beautiful like Laura. But I want to thank Rachel, and I love that story about her daughter and the dog. To me, that's a pure miracle and just awe-inspiring. And another thing,
I've always not felt like it was okay to be human. And one thing that Michael Neal and Rohini, you and Angus have taught me in being so vulnerable is that it's okay to be human. And I'm just giving love and hugs to everyone, but I want to speak to Cheryl a little bit. And I don't want to waste your time, but this may be a little bit helpful. I don't tell my story because I'm not my story, it's what I've experienced, but it's not who I am. But a couple years ago, before I had this understanding, I had a near-death experience. And when I was out of my body on the other side, my only regret was that I didn't enjoy life more. I looked upon life, my perception was overcoming one trial after another. And I heard my daughter praying me back. And I heard the words, we're not going to allow you to go on because we're honoring your daughter's prayers. So I asked, what am I to learn? And what I was told was that you've given your whole life for everyone else. It's time to learn to do you. And I think for empathetic people, sometimes that's a very hard thing. But when I came back, I realized in not charging my own batteries like a cell phone, I didn't have as much to give to others. And I'm not very enlightened because even death hasn't fully taught me. But another thing is, it's kind of been the theme through everyone. Michael Neal keeps talking about how we put limits because we put time frames on things. And what has really helped me in this understanding is even more so than even my near-death experiences. And then I was in a coma for 10 days. And when I came out of it, I still have a lot of physical challenges, but it really doesn't matter. It has no bearing on how I feel what I'm going through. Another is that it has just let go of expectations of how I think things should be. I was putting expectations on what I thought life should look like, and they just naturally fell away. And the third is, I always kind of struggled between the spiritual and the physical. To me, I don't see them as separate anymore. So I don't have that internal struggle. And I don't know if those things will help Cheryl at all. But whatever we're going through is okay. I mean, I'm not saying I have the answers because I surely don't, or that there is one right way to do things. But I just wanted to offer my love and maybe hope that my experience would help her just a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much. Really, I really appreciate that. Can I say something?
Yeah, go
Absolutely.
It was really helpful. I think when you talked about expectations, always doing the comparison game, and I shouldn't have those expectations of myself.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like I live in like that jealousy mode. Like the grass is greener there, it's easier for them there, blah, blah, blah. But I don't put in the time to make that for my life.
Well, and also, if I may say something else, I don't think you have to relive the trauma to be healed. I think when our soul hears a truth, then what's untrue or what I've been struggling with just naturally falls away.
Right.
I don't think, I don't, for me, and I'm not saying this is correct for anyone else, it's not helpful for me to relive the trauma because that doesn't help anything. But when I see the truth of whatever situation it is, or the truth of who I am, it doesn't matter because what's untrue wasn't real to begin with anyway. So it just naturally
Fades away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. With time. Yeah.
I hope that you can see yourself with the beauty that I see you with.
Thank you so much. That's so nice. Thank you.
Lovely.
And
Thank
again,
you.
Rachel and Rohini, thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. That was really beautiful what you shared.
And it's really been an honor. I feel very selfish that I got to talk to you twice this week.
Lovely to see you again. So thank you for everybody who participated. I just really love the space that gets created, even in this virtual format. And I just love the love and the care and the generosity that everybody shares in these calls, and the vulnerability and openness. And just it's a space that's created by all of us. So thank you for that, and thank you, Rachel, for being the speaker this time around.
Yeah,
It's wonderful
oh my
having
gosh, it
you
was
here.
a joy to be on and to get to see everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I can't unmute everybody, but if everyone wants to unmute yourself, you can all say goodbye.
Okay.
Bye, and thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.